All right, welcome, Josh. Another podcast. Today we thought, well, you thought, so I won't take the glory. But the question you've titled this one "Questions that changed everything," and I suppose the theme is just trying to provide a sort of some rounded examples of where sometimes seeking financial advice for people can be a bit sort of bland or factual and stuff like that. And we thought we'd just provide some examples of where the conversation has sort of morphed into other types of conversations, more rounded conversations, more whole of life conversations, rather than just staying in the facts and figures of superannuation or tax and stuff like that. So, did you want to share, I suppose, some of your experiences, and maybe I just ask a couple of questions, sort of as prompters, or did you want to just provide a little bit of an overview of how it's happened in real life for you, where you might have started with a technical question that's morphed into a more rounded answer?
Yeah, so I suppose that's where my lane typically sits as financial advisors, accountants, kind of that financial professional. We tend to stick with numbers.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when we meet with a client, they'll send us through loan statements, bank accounts, what their super investments are doing, all of that. And so you can look at that information and start to get a bit of a picture about that client and how you might be able to help. But then when you actually meet that person and you start to listen to exactly what they're saying and the deeper meaning behind it, you start to unpack different elements that you need to bring to the table and how you shape that advice. So I often find I'm pleasantly surprised when you get taken in a certain direction with a client, and sometimes I can have two people who look the same on paper who could be neighbours, and yet they go different directions in what's appropriate for them, not just now, but also the impact on 10 years or 15 years. So I thought over the last couple of months, I've just been thinking about some of those clients. I've jotted down some of those questions and just amalgamated it into some common themes, just to protect a bit of identity and stuff as well. But good opportunity just to unpack a little bit of some of those directions we go.
All right, so I'll ask some questions.
Sure.
So a client type of question: are we doing enough, or are we falling behind?
Yeah, that one's a common one, and I would unpack that into the two questions that it has. So are we doing enough? Well, that depends on what you're trying to achieve.
In terms of objectives or more financial enough?
Yeah. It's usually asked through the lens of, is my mortgage low enough? Is my super high enough? Am I earning enough? It's those questions.
Yep.
So am I doing enough? Again, the common theme of the answer to that question is it depends. It depends on what you're trying to achieve, on whether that's enough and you're on track. The second part of that is, are we falling behind? And that's, well, in comparison to what? So you hear the concept of keeping up with the Joneses. So it depends what your benchmark is. So I usually strip that back and figure out exactly where that client is, because it's important to get the facts right. So getting budgets and pay slips, all that kind of stuff together, but also figuring out, well, where do you want to go? Because that's the equivalent of just driving on an open road in the middle of Australia and going, am I late or am I on time? It's like, well, it depends where you're going and when you need to get there. So you need to sometimes step back and ask that question.
Yeah.
So that's a common one I get. Again, we could have approached that meeting thinking, great, we're going to be talking about pay slips and the industry they're in and the opportunities to increase income, but all of a sudden we're talking about values and really stripping back what they're trying to get out of life, what their goals are for their children. So often just takes you in a different direction.
Yep. And so in the family context with kids, so the balance, I suppose, maybe private education versus public education, the costs involved. So I suppose the question is, can we afford to invest further in our kids' education without compromising our sort of long-term financial future? Yeah,
that's a common one too. So kind of balancing can we enjoy our short term without compromising the long term is one I often get as well.
Yep.
And that can be tricky. Again, this is where the answer is it depends on what you're trying to achieve. It's a good example you used with private schooling versus public schooling.
Yep.
Another one can be, what age do you want to retire? What type of lifestyle do you want to live?
Yep.
Is there a goal to pay off debt by a certain age? There's those kind of considerations as well. Do you want to leave a legacy behind to the next generation, or can they kind of fend for themselves? There's so much to unpack there on whether it's actually worth making some decisions over others.
So how would you help people unpack those filters?
Yes, it starts to get out of the financial side of things. So Andrew, another financial planner here with Financial Streams, and I, we're both accredited in the behavioural side of finance as well, and so it actually becomes more of a values conversation. We then determine what it is they're trying to achieve, and then we make sure that their finances support that goal. Because it's probably where it might surprise some people. You meet with a financial planner, you think it's all about finance and maximising the future, but really, what's the point of money if you're not going to use it to enhance your lifestyle? So it's that concept of happy, healthy, wealthy, and all are important. Sometimes you need to take a little bit of put the brakes on the financial to increase the lifestyle or the connection you might have to your kids or your spouse, because that's going to be better for you long term.
Do you want to unpack the happy, healthy, wealthy concepts that you just mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely can. It's going to mean different things to different people, but I often picture that visually as a three-legged stool. So happy, healthy, wealthy being that I think you need all three of those pillars. Without one, to me, the stool is not stable. It's going to fall over. The adage that I often hear is that people spend their health throughout their 20s, 30s, 40s to get their wealth built up. They get to 50 or 60, realise they're out of shape, their relationships aren't good, they then spend their wealth trying to get all their health back. And so it's trying to just figure out over time what's the optimum to make sure you're hitting all those periods. We hear the term work-life balance. That probably means different things to different people. So I like to unpack that. The analogy I would use is if you picture someone on a unicycle, and I said, what's the number one skill you need to ride a unicycle? Most people would say balance. However, if you actually watch someone on a unicycle, they're actually falling forwards and then they're falling backwards. And that's how they stay upright. They're never just sitting upright. So I'd say at any given point, you might be fully focused on your career. And so you're not being as good a husband as you can be or as good a father as you can be. Maybe it's end of financial year. July rolls around, great, I'm going to back off work. I'm actually going to double down on taking the kids on a holiday. And so you find you're often falling in a direction of happy, healthy, or wealthy, where you prioritise each. It's important over the year that you're balancing it out.
I like the unicycle analogy. I never realised that they're never fully upright. They're sort of just oscillating between forward and backwards, sort of leaning.
Look, and I'm visual, so to me that's a nice and easy one to do. And if you actually do analyse your life, you're like, there are times where I do have to make sure I'm going out on date nights and I'm getting to the gym 3 times a week, and there are other times where I just need to get some work done and push the business forward.
And I've always had in my mind it's like not the unicycle, but it's a pendulum. So a pendulum, the swings one way or another on a clock, the old clocks and stuff like that. But you never stays in the centre of that. So the work-life balance for me, I go, it's sort of like guardrails or bumper bars to sort of pick up when things are getting out of control, or if you've got a trusted, friend, partner who's happy to have that conversation with you. Very out of balance, but I've never seen anyone get exactly right in the middle all the time. So
no, nor do I think the goal should be, okay, I've got 24 hours in a day, I'm going to spend 8 hours being happy, 8 hours being healthy, and 8 hours being wealthy. I think it's, there is a bit of that pendulum, I think, and just recognising that. And sometimes when you're in your 20s and 30s and questions come up like, am I doing enough? Am I behind? You can get in that mindset where you feel like you need to catch up. And so you're very much in the neglecting things like your health and your relationships, because you're just trying to make as much money as you can as soon as you can, whereas you might not be analysing, well, how much am I spending? Because it's one thing to be bailing water out of a boat, but if I've got holes in the boat, I'm better off fixing them first, and now it's more effective to bail the water. So if I'm trying to help someone get out of debt, that's often an analysis that I do.
The next question is probably quite a blunt one, but it's one that you do cover. What happens to my partner if I was to die tomorrow? So
that one, I try to include a couple of scenarios that have come to me with clients, but this specific one happened really early in my career. So this is 8-9 years ago, so I was very early days, and this was actually a terminally ill person that came to seek advice. They just received a life insurance policy, got paid out, and they came to me with their spouse, a couple of young kids, and they were basically planning, knowing that he'd be passing away 4 to 6 months away. Which is quite an emotional meeting. They were very matter of fact about it, but that was the question: what do I do with this money? I've got a mortgage, I've got a wife, I've got young kids, and so we had to have that discussion around the estate planning. So you talk about your wills, power of attorney, what happens to my superannuation when I die, because that's not often linked to the will. But also, what legacy do you want to leave behind, knowing that you won't be here 12 months from now? And I do find those conversations can be difficult for clients, because it's hard to plan for a future you're not going to be a part of. You're trying to picture this world that operates without you in it, and that's really hard to do. So getting someone who can actually bring some of the numbers to it, and maybe do some cash flows that project what paying off debt does, and what structures need to be set up so that kids have university access and you know, things you want to leave behind had you been here until you were 50 or 60.
Yeah, no, it's a question that a lot of us always avoid. So it's the upside of having someone independent, such as yourself, to facilitate discussion on those things, because often it's, or in your example, it was someone who had already been diagnosed, but often I would presume it's a discussion point just to talk about what that looks like.
Yeah.
For a couple that, you know, if one was to pass away, what does it look like for the remaining partner? So.
Yeah, and that's where it's different for different clients as well, because it could be a husband and wife where things are fairly straightforward, and it's like, okay, well, I can explain to you how that works. You've got adult children versus, you know, I'm 35, I come from blended families, we've each got our own kids, we kind of keep our finances separate. Well, what happens if we pass away? That's a little bit more complex.
Yeah.
You may want to have certain allowances for your spouse, but also don't want your kids excluded.
Yep.
So it's good to have somebody who can have that strategic overlay,
Yep.
but also meet you where you're at, not necessarily to make it emotional, but just to bring some of that into it without it being too much emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone who can kind of balance that.
Yep. Another common question I believe you get is, what if my current job isn't secure, and sort of some risks, I suppose, about my employment income?
Yeah, so that one typically stems from, I guess it's just that risk aversion. Some people just go, what happens if my income stops? So that can be through accident or illness.
Okay.
So it might go down an insurance discussion to talk about income protection, or it may come down to maybe a savings or investment conversation to go, do we have a pot of money as an emergency fund that we can access?
Yep.
But it could be something as simple as, you know, I've got a new employer, or maybe I work contract to contract. What happens if I don't earn income for 6 months, but I'm not injured, I don't have insurance that'll pay out?
Yep.
So again, that question, if my income's going to stop, or if my income's not stable, it can change the direction based on that scenario.
And I think, you know, the world's a moving place, so even if someone was sort of a client of yours, their scenario might look different in 6 to 12 months' time when they first sort of met with yourself, then you can sort of say, well, here's, you know, plan A, so to speak, and now we're into plan B because your circumstances have changed, or what that might look like.
Yeah, it's good to scenario plan, to go, here's option 1, option 2, and that way, when you're up at night at 2 a.m. thinking, what happens if this shifts, you've at least got an idea of what levers and pulleys you've got access to.
Yeah. And have a bit of margin, I suppose, in the plan, so that if something doesn't go to plan, that you've got a bit of leeway, you know, X months worth of incomes available on a redraw or something like that. You haven't sort of maxed out every single available line of credit or whatever.
Yeah, and to reference our last conversation, we talked about small business and the feast and famine cycle, and sometimes that can be some of that income instability where you do recognise that maybe certain times of the year you're more abundant and there's lots of money coming in, and then there's 6 months where there's limited work, maybe it's seasonal. So that can be something we need to just map through with clients.
Next one, it quite intrigues me. You've got this on your list. It says, can I take a year off work and not ruin everything?
So I had that client probably about a year ago,
right.
And surprising. So sometimes I get that with retirement. Someone wants to transition and start to just go, let's do a lap around Australia.
Right.
I myself attempted that. We can go into that if you want. That was when COVID happened, so that's how I ended up
stranded in Tassie, didn't you?
That's right. Yeah. So that was very much let's take a year off work, take the caravan around while we've got some time before we have kids. But it does have an impact to your cash flow. And the particular client I was working with was in a state of burnout, worked in an industry where a bit of that hospice care, it's quite draining, takes a lot out of you. You're thinking about death all of the time and what's it all for.
Yep.
And they just needed a break. And it was, what happens if I take 12 months off to travel? Because I'm not going to be getting super contributions if I rent my house out versus keep it empty, because I had young kids as well. And when I say young, I'm talking 17-year-olds, so they're kind of fend for themselves. They can cook an egg if they need to, but can you leave them alone for 12 months in a house? So just mapping out, well, you know, do you rent out the house? Do you have relatives that you can have them stay with? So just mapping out those cash flows. Is the interest going to be tax deductible? Like, I start to unpack lots of those things. How much money are you going to need to spend? Because it depends. If you're just sitting in a caravan every day, that's a different expense to, we're going to go swimming with whale sharks. We're going to be, you know, going off fishing excursions. And so just mapping out some options for them and going, well, look, you either can do it or can't do it, or you can do it with these caveats. Are you prepared to take on those downsides? And so I was able to map that out, and they could then make a decision they were comfortable moving forward with. And some things they hadn't considered. So tax deductibility, and they're just they just wanted to have a break. There's all these other things it
Okay.
unpacks.
Yep.
So that's a good one as well.
No, interesting one.
Mm.
Well, we might leave it there. We might do a part 2 on this one because I find it quite fascinating, and hopefully others as well. So I suppose you've mentioned a couple of times that, having the trusted advisor, starting off sort of more facts and figures that morphs into quite a broad ranging conversation. Is there any sort of parting comments that you'd like to make?
Yeah, I would just, if there's those, I mean, there are only a couple of examples of
Yeah.
questions and they seem simple, and that's not to say we make them complicated, but sometimes stripping back exactly what a client's asking so you can get to the root of their problem and try and solve it. It's not always financial. So I guess if you've had similar questions that you've either said to a spouse or a friend, or you've been, again, I use the 2 a.m. example where you're staring at the roof thinking of these things.
All problems look much worse at 2 a.m.
They do, but don't keep those questions to yourself.
Yeah.
So, we do offer that free 15-minute chat if you just want to pick up the phone, ask a couple of questions, and just see how we can help. We do love adding value, so certainly feel free to reach out to Financial Streams and see how we can help.
Great. Thanks, Josh, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.